One of the many parks within Nuka World is the World of Refreshment. This is a theme park ride where visitors would have gotten on big boats and sailed down a river while a tour guide pointed out interesting things about Nuka-Cola. Within the World of Refreshment ride is the Nuka-Cola bottling and mixing plant. So this building was both a tourist attraction and also a functional factory. After meeting the raider bosses here at Nuka World, we are sent to the World of Refreshment to clear it of enemies so that the Nuka World Raiders can move on in. But even if we don't talk with the raider bosses first, as soon as we get close to the World of Refreshment, we start the quest, a World of Refreshment. We have to clear all of the enemies inside and outside. We'll start by going inside. There is a big river of glowing blue water pouring out of an exit from the World of Refreshment, but the exit is blocked up with rubble and wrecked boats. Just outside we find the park medallion dispenser. We need one of these to finish the quest Precious Metals given to us by Nira. After collecting our token, we'll enter through the only visible entrance. We'll learn later that there are many other entrances to this plant, but for now, we'll enter the way visitors would have 200 years ago, by heading down the big glowing river.
Welcome to the Nuka-Cola World of Refreshment, now featuring a river of Nuka-Cola Quantum. Nuka-Cola Quantum, twice the calories, twice the carbohydrates, twice the caffeine, and twice the taste. And just look at that amazing patented blue glow. So sit back and enjoy the ride as we take you through the Nuka-Cola World of Refreshment.
We see that the automated tour guide is still active all these years later. But this is no longer a friendly amusement ride. We quickly learn that the World of Refreshment has been taken over by Mirelurks, but these aren't regular Mirelurks. These Mirelurks glow blue. These are Nuka-Lurks. They have mutated and changed over 200 years, their biology reacting to the Nuka-Cola Quantum in this river. Now I'm on my stealth character, so instead of going in guns blazing like I typically do, I'm going to start by avoiding as many enemies as possible. There's no way that I can win a melee battle against one of these highly armored Mirelurks. They can kill me in 2 hits. As we creep down the river and go through a tunnel, we approach an exhibit to the right where the automated tour guide begins her next segment.
Nuka-Cola began its journey in the year 2042 when our founder, John Caleb Bradburton, was a budding chemist. He dreamt of a delicious soft drink that would provide energy, focus, and 120% of the recommended daily value of sugar.
There is an expert-locked door on the back of this exhibit, but instead of unlocking all of these doors and breaking the flow of this attraction, let's go through the whole attraction and then explore the employee area. Heading out and turning right down the river, we see a miniature city, complete with a miniature Nuka-Cola delivery truck. There are clutches of Nuka-Lurk eggs all over the place, and I wanted to find a good place to hide, so I turned left down a miniature alleyway. As the eggs hatched, the Nuka-Lurk spawn began to look for me, so I jumped up on top of this tiny little truck and listened to the next part of the automated presentation.
Not one to rest on his laurels, Mr. Bradburton and his team of talented beverageers continued to create new and exciting formulas. It took almost 2 years to perfect the formula, but in late 2044, Mr. Bradburton was finally successful, and Nuka-Cola was born.
The Mirelurk spawn are looking for me, and this activity has attracted an adult Nuka-Lurk. I ran across the river to a ledge and hid in the corner to kill these Nuka-Lurk spawn. There's a big shopping cart filled with Nuka-Cola right here, and an automaton wearing a Nuka World costume that we can add to our collection. But the Nuka-Lurk rounded the corner and spotted me. Well, the game was up, so popping out of stealth, I ran down the street, turned right, and entered into the Western-themed segment of this attraction. Using the stealth field of my Chinese stealth armor, I jumped up on top of the roofs of one of these nearby miniature buildings and waited for my danger meter to go down. While waiting, we can listen to the Western-themed segment of the attraction.
Out west, they enjoy regional favorites, such as the classy Nuka-Cola Quartz and refreshingly patriotic Nuka-Cola Victory. Or for those that prefer a timeless fruit-based beverage, they pick up a delicious Nuka-Cola Wild.
It was a big mistake on my part, allowing myself to be seen by the Nuka-Lurk spawn. Their activity has awakened not only the Nuka-Lurks, but also these shrimp-like Nuka-Lurk hunters. I've made life difficult for myself now. I have to sneak past all of these guys. Waiting for the right moment, we can sneak past one of these big wrecked boats, past a miniature oil well, and tiptoe over a Nuka-Lurk nest, trying not to hatch these eggs until we find a corner where we can rest. Then when the Nuka-Lurk hunter walks to the side, we can bypass an automaton model wearing a Western outfit to reach the opposite side of the river. And it looks like we've made it. However, we find a body lying here. A gunner. Wait a minute, what is a gunner doing here? On his body, we only find some ammunition and leather armor. There is a Nuka-Cola buried in the mud back here, and we see a Nuka-Cola Quantum glowing on a balcony of a nearby building, but I don't have power armor on this character, nor do I have a jetpack. How am I going to get that? Well, I wanted to play the long game here. So waiting for the Nuka-Lurks to move on by, I pulled out my deliverer and shot it off the balcony. And now we run. I'll come back for that later. Heading to the east, we see a hole in the wall. We can run on in here to hide. Heading up the stairs, we see two skeletons lying here, a man and a woman. And at the top of the stairs is an advanced locked door. Again, we'll leave these doors alone for now. Heading back down, we can bypass another Nuka-Lurk clutch of eggs. I don't want to risk awakening any of the spawn. But whoops, looks like I did anyway. After killing the spawn, we can tiptoe out into the river again and bypass another clutch of eggs which frustratingly erupt. Hiding in the corner while the spawn come looking for us, they attract the attention of a nearby Nuka-Lurk hunter. The Nuka-Lurk hunter seems to beeline straight towards us, but still, for some reason, we remain undetected.
While out here on the East Coast, folks delight in the refreshment of an ice-cold Nuka grape, Nuka orange, or Nuka cherry. And be on the lookout for our special pre-release shipments of Nuka-Cola Quantum, coming soon to your favorite grocer or restaurant.
After waiting for our caution meter to go down, we can creep back into the river, where we find ourselves in a miniature city, an urban area. Nuka-Lurks pop from the ground as we sneak around. Moving quickly, we head through a tunnel, leaving the East Coast part of the exhibit to enter a lounge part of the exhibit, where we can listen to the next segment.
Hey, Mom and Dad, are you ready for a night out on the town? Then pick up an ice-cold Nuka-Cola Dark and experience the most thirst-quenching way to unwind. 35% alcohol by volume. Do not consume Nuka-Cola Dark if you're pregnant or planning on becoming pregnant. Do not operate motor vehicles or heavy machinery for at least 8 hours after drinking.
We find one Nuka-Cola back here, and the cash register is of course empty, as this was a fake bar. There's another locked door back here, but we're going to ignore it for now. And we see a Nuka-Cola Dark on a wall-mounted shelf. To get it, we can hop up on top of the counter and just reach up. It's well within reach. To continue, we creep out of this alcove and turn east down the river. Looking to the right, we see a full suit of Nuka-Cola painted T-51 power armor, locked behind a security door. Well, what at one time was simply an amusement park display item is now potentially a wonderful battle asset for ourselves. But how do we get to it? After looting a first aid kit on a window ledge to the northeast, we see that these windows overlook a functional Nuka-Cola plant. The automated tour guide gives us more context.
But this isn't just a ride. It's one of several operational factories actively producing Nuka-Cola. Here in the mixing area, we combine just a hint of 17 select fruit flavors to produce that unique Nuka-Cola taste.
Moving down, we can sneak past a Nuka-Lurk and head to the window again to learn about the next part of the plant.
Here in the bottling chamber, we carefully pour each delicious liquid into our new space-age rocket bottles. Each bottle is carbonated and then sealed with one of our signature bottle caps.
Contact lost.
The bottling plant was guarded by a bunch of assaultrons. The Nuka-Lurks running around in this tunnel attracted their attention, and the assaultrons ran from the bottling plant to try and reach this tunnel. We bypassed a big hole in the wall while walking around, but we'll get back to that in a minute. I want to see what these assaultrons do to the Nuka-Lurks. Continuing down and rounding the corner, we find the Nuka-Lurk hunters in a full-on battle with 3 assaultrons. We can enjoy this battle while listening to the tour guide talk about the last part of this exhibit.
And now for a special surprise. This is where we produce the newest member of our family, Nuka-Cola Quantum. That blue glow isn't just for show, folks. Quantum contains a top secret additive to give you a nuclear boost of energy.
And that's it. The Nuka hunters are down. Now we have to deal with these Assaultrons, all 3 of which are still alive.
That blue glow isn't
Oh,
just...
make that only 2. Looks like a Nuka spawn killed one off. So we have 2 Assaultrons to deal with. Thankfully, I've got Hacker. Hacking into this Assaultron, we can incite him against the other.
Ambush. Defensive protocols engaged.
After dealing with the Nuka spawn that attacked us, we see that one Assaultron has defeated the other, and now she's coming towards us. But we can quickly hack it before we take too much damage, and then incite this one. And now the stealthy part of our adventure ends, and the battle begins. This Assaultron is thankfully taking care of all of the Nuka spawn. When they're dealt with, we can sick her against the Nuka. And pulling out our trusty, dusty Overseer's Guardian, we can join in the battle. But the Nuka won. Our Assaultron is down. After getting off a few shots, we can run to the very end of this exhibit and use the terrain to our advantage. Climbing atop a big display piece, we can try to pick off this Nuka. But he retreats for some reason, and so we can crouch down until our danger meter disappears. While we wait, we can listen to the final segment of this automated tour.
On behalf of all of us at Nuka World, we hope you have enjoyed the ride and learning more about Nuka-Cola.
But then he comes back. Woo! He brought me down to nerd rage territory, but at least we defeated this guy. After looting the Nuka for meat and retrieving as many eggs as we can get, we can explore this end area. We see waterfalls of Nuka-Cola Quantum draining from the tops of these model bottles. And at the very end, we see an astronaut animatronic. Now, this is where we can go to get one of the spacesuits needed to complete the Hubologist quests. We find ourselves at the exit that we saw from outside that's completely caved in and blocked up with rubble, so we need to find another way out. Now it's time to explore the employees section of the world of Refreshment. After looting a first aid kit on the wall, we can go up some scaffolding where we see a destroyed Protectron. I wonder why he's destroyed. We didn't destroy him. Someone has been here before. Now I've had my Chinese stealth armor on this entire time, knowing I was going to try and stealth by these guys, but now that we'll be engaging in combat, I'm going to go ahead and put my armor back on. At the top of these stairs, we see one machine gun turret. A sneak critical takes care of him quickly. We find ourselves in a concrete room with a staircase leading up. After looting the containers, we can head on up to arrive at a catwalk overlooking the exhibit. This is promising evidence that we may be able to kill the rest of the Nuka from range before leaving the world of Refreshment. But for now, we need to continue through a door to the north. Here we see some machine gun turrets firing on a Nuka. We can take advantage of the situation to finish both of these off. Heading down to investigate, we can unlock an advanced locked ammo box on a countertop, sitting right next to an explosives box. And before heading down the stairs, we need to disarm a frag mine at the very top. Just below this, we find a corpse. This is the corpse of Corporal Downey, another gunner. At the very bottom, we can turn right to find a cooler embedded in the mud, and we see that this exits back to the river through a big hole in the wall. This is the hole we bypassed earlier after the Assaultrons attacked the Nuka. Alright, so now that I know where I am, and now that I have my bearings, we can go back up the stairs, and we have a choice. We can head west, or we can head east. We'll start by heading west. This brings us to a utility tunnel where we find another hole in the wall overlooking the river. Another great spot to snipe these Nuka. We'll have to remember this for later. Continuing forward, we see that the utility tunnel splits. A path runs off to the north and then down some stairs to the west. We'll start by going down some stairs to the west. At the end, we can open a door, leading us down even more stairs to a platform. We see that the stairs go further down, but we also find a door to the west. We'll go west first, heading through this door, and we go down a long hallway to find ourselves in a large vaulted room. Heading north, we can explore a small caged-off area where we find an ammo box, and as we try to leave it... Oh, didn't notice those. We get attacked by some machine gun turrets. Now this is interesting. I wonder if we can use this to our advantage. We see some scaffolding to the right continuing on up, but we also see an advanced lock door to the north. After unlocking the door, we see that this is the door that was at the top of the stairs where we found the skeleton of the man and the woman. Turning east, we see some lockers, and then on the ground next to these lockers to the south, we see a disturbing scene. 2 teddy bears stabbing a souvenir bear through the heart with a knife. And above this morbid scene is the word help, spelled out in blocks. What can explain these murderous teddy bears? And why would they pick on this poor souvenir one? The world may never know. Now, to test out a theory, I wanted to see if I could lure some of these Nuka lurks into this room. So heading back into the river and taking pot shots, I did my best to lure them up here, but they just didn't want to come. I did finally get the turrets to take a few shots at the Nuka lurks, but they didn't seem to do much damage. So instead of wasting my time hoping for the best, I decided to just continue exploring. There is a workbench on this platform. Next to it is a countertop with a huge roll of Nuka Kid tickets. We can head up the scaffolding and sneak behind the 2 turrets. One is a Mark I, the other a Mark III, to open a door to the south. This brings us to a small rooftop overlooking the river. Another advantageous point from which to snipe some of these Nuka lurks. We'll keep this in mind for when we come back to get rid of the Nuka lurks. But otherwise, this is just a dead end. All it does is lead back to the river we've already explored, so retracing our steps, we can head back to that platform, and before we go down the stairs, we can loot a first aid kit on the wall and read the bottling plant staff terminal. Here we find 2 segments, staff memos and ride display scripts. In staff memos, we can read the first one called Grand Reopening. To all ride staff. After being on vacation for the past month, I'm sure you are all excited to be back and earning a paycheck. So let's see those smiles. We've only got a couple of days before the grand reopening, and if management doesn't feel like you're suitably eager and enthusiastic, you can be replaced. Don't forget, they can still decide to go fully automated for the reopening, so buck up and ride the Quantum. In fact, I've been told by the beverageers that if you're feeling a little low on energy, you can drink the Quantum right out of the river. This new Nuka-Cola Quantum is so packed full of energy that it kills any bacteria it touches, so drink up. Tough working conditions at the World of Refreshment, and this entry just complicates things. At first, it appears to contradict with some of the loading slides we find in the game. One of the loading slides reads, just before Nuka-Cola Quantum was released, the World of Refreshment's water was tinted a glowing blue color to simulate the look of the beverage for promotional purposes. Well, okay, so is it just water tinted blue? Or is it actual Nuka-Cola Quantum? If we are to believe this terminal entry, then it's Nuka-Cola Quantum, not just dyed blue water. This is also the only explanation for the Nuka lurks. We even learned from Fallout 3 that Nuka lurks can only exist in an environment where they have further mutated after exposure to Nuka-Cola Quantum. So these Mirelurks would not be Nuka lurks unless this water was really Nuka-Cola Quantum. Also, as a side note, it's terrifying to think that Nuka-Cola Quantum kills all bacteria it comes in contact with, because there's quite an assortment of healthy bacteria within a human gut that we really wouldn't want to kill off. So, Nuka-Cola Quantum is officially not healthy. At any rate, we can move on to the next note, Nuka Bar automated till further notice. To all ride staff, management has decided that the Nuka Bar section of the ride is to be automated only until further notice. Despite numerous warnings that actors are only to simulate drinking Nuka-Cola Dark while staffing that section of the ride, Jenny fell off the stool and into the river. She's fine, but the nurse said she had a blood alcohol level of 0.37, only after 2 hours into her shift. While we appreciate her enthusiasm for Nuka-Cola products, we also have to maintain a safe environment for our guests, one of whom lost their glasses when Jenny hit her on the boat. I have to admit that of all of the exhibits here in the world of refreshment, I'd probably most enjoy working on this one. And the next one, stick to the script. To all ride staff, I understand that some of you have come to work for us from other amusement parks where ad-libbing was permitted or even encouraged, but here at Nuka World, we ask that you stick to the script. For example, the Wild West section of the ride is to be staffed only by cowboys or cowgirls. It is not to be staffed by Nuka Girl, Zetans, clowns, knights, pirates, gorillas, ninjas, or sea monsters. Interesting here that a pre-war amusement park manager calls sci-fi aliens by their real name, Zetans. The pre-war Fallout universe was likely obsessed with alien life forms, as was our own universe during the 1950s, even up till today. But we learned from Mothership Zeta that aliens were not only real, but that they were indeed called Zetans. How would this amusement park ride manager know that? In the next one, no more pranks. To all ride staff, it has come to our attention that a number of pranks have been played on workers in the bottling plant. Be advised that these kinds of pranks are not in keeping with the culture outlined in the Nuka World Employee Handbook. For example, filling a tray of empty bottles with dry ice and sending them into the capper so they explode when sealed is clearly in violation of our safety protocols. I'm sure when Randall gets out of the hospital, he'll probably say it was hilarious, but Nuka-Cola is paying for his eye surgery, so management finds it less than funny. Ouch! That's not a prank, that's just mean and malicious. I hate it when people do horrible things to each other and just say, "It's just a prank, bro. Just a prank." Come on. That's it for staff memos. Moving on to ride display scripts. The first was Brad Burton's lab, and we find that the script is dialogue between the Brad Burton actor and his assistant. "Boy, all this science sure does work up a thirst."
"But sir, all we have is coffee, water, and a variety of other boring beverages."
That won't do at all. I've got an idea." Pantomime's creation of Nuka-Cola.
"Sir, you've done it! This is delicious and I can feel my heart racing."
Eureka! So long, science. Hello, refreshment. Yeah, that's probably how it went down. In the next one, for Western Town, we find a conversation between two cowboys. "Gosh darn it, I just can't do anymore. Bert, I can't." He throws his hat on the ground. "Well, what's the matter, Roy?" "I just got done busting a load of bronco, and I'm more tired than a three-legged mule pulling a load of rock up a mountain." "Here, drink this delicious Nuka-Cola Wild. The authentic root beer flavor will give you everything you need to get back to riding in no time." "Gosh darn it, time to go rustle up some more broncos, Bert. Yeehaw!" Sorry for that one. And in the final one, the Nuka Bar, we find a conversation between the bartender and its female patron. "What can I get you to drink, miss?"
"Oh, I don't know. All these drinks take forever to help me unwind, and they usually taste terrible."
"Sounds like what you need is a Nuka-Cola Dark."
"Tell me more."
"You'll be ready for the night after your first drink, and it has the delicious taste you know to expect from Nuka-Cola products."
"Anyone here want to buy me a Nuka-Cola Dark?"
And thankfully, that's all of them. So, heading down to the bottom floor, we see two doors leading out, a red door to the east and a white door to the south. The red door is locked with an advanced lock, and it leads to the bar exhibit where we found that Nuka-Cola Dark. Interestingly, once we unlock and open the door, we can still see the door, but the door, for all intents and purposes, disappears. We can't close it again, and we can pass right through it. Unlocking the expert white door to the south puts us in Brad Burton's chemistry lab. And again, we find the same strange issue with the door. But this path ends at the river as well, which we've already explored, so retracing our steps, we can instead travel down the utility tunnel to the northwest. This brings us to an open door leading to some scaffolding overlooking the bottling plant. However, this is just one of many ways to enter the bottling plant. Instead of taking this one, let's retrace our steps to continue exploring the employees section before we head to the bottling plant floor. This means we must now travel east to pass through the eastern door at the top of the stairs where we destroyed that turret. This leads us to what appears to be a control room of some sort. We find consoles decorating every wall. There's a bottle of Nuka-Cola on one of them, and on another we find a note going to the roof. running up to the roof for a minute to check if this is some sort of military training exercise. Casey. Next to this note is an expert-locked systems control terminal. Now, Casey took the passcode to this terminal with him to the roof, so if our hacking skill is not high enough, we can still gain access to this terminal by going to the roof. Otherwise, we can hack into the terminal where we find two options. We can access subsystems, but that's a failure. Subsystem access cannot be established due to an unknown error. And the next option is to unlock a security door. Well, we've only seen one security door so far, the door to the cage where we saw the Nuka-Cola T51 power armor. We'll have to go back for the power armor in a bit. After looting the containers in this room, we see two paths before us. We can go north down some stairs, or we can go south towards a ramp. Well, going north, we see that down these stairs leads to another pod of some sort. This stairway overlooks part of the plant. We see big glowing tanks out there. Instead of going down this way, we'll head south and go down some stairs. We pass two Nuka mixer stations to the left as we reach the bottom, and we see some Nuka lurks that are already dead. We'll learn why when we move east. Here we find 3 bodies, near to a construction light, a cooking stove, and 3 sleeping bags. These are more gunners, led by Sergeant Lanier. We find one of the star cores we need to activate Star Command lying on the ground next to one of these gunner corpses, and we find Sergeant Lanier herself lying on the ground near to a table with a first aid kit and Corporal Downey's report.
This is Corporal Downey. As far as I know, last living member of Sergeant Lanier's recon team. We tried to secure the bottling plant and got overrun by some new breed of Mirelurk. I've never seen anything like them. Blue glow so strong, stronger than any Commonwealth lurk I've encountered. It's gotta be the quantum running through this place. We breached their nest and they poured out. We felt bad, but I'm pretty sure one of those damn lurks made off with my leg in the process. Private Clay dragged me to safety before I sent him to warn the others back at the camp, but I could hear their screams from here. I know that help's not coming, and I'll be damned if I'm gonna be food for some Mirelurk spawn, so I'm taking this matter into my own hands. This is Corporal Downey, signing off. For good.
Corporal Downey was that corpse we found on the stairs next to that machine gun turret. This is part of a greater story about the gunners that I explored when I talked about the gunner base on top of the Bradburton overpass. In that video, I completed the story, which I continued in my dedicated video on the gunners. You can watch both of those videos by clicking here. Next to Sergeant Lanier is a big end-of-dungeon steamer trunk filled with ammunition, explosives, and all sorts of goodies. And then to the right, we find the doors to the Project Cobalt lab. We can open these doors using the terminal on the wall, but only after restoring power to the park, which is something we do at the very end of the Nuka World quests. The story behind these doors is fascinating and deserved its own video, which is why I made one. You can watch my video on Project Cobalt, which explores everything behind these doors by clicking here. But for now, we need to continue forward and clear the Nuka lurks from the bottling plant. We can climb up some stairs to a platform in the middle of this room. This must have been a control station for the big tubs we see to the east. These must be big mixing tanks of some sort, where the various ingredients for Nuka-Cola Quantum were mixed into the finalized product. We can continue to the north, where we see 2 openings into a room filled with shipping containers, and there's a big pile of Nuka-Cola Quantum on the ground to the east. After looting them all, we see that these had spilled out of a nearby box, which is possessed. It spazzes out. Another strange quirk of Bethesda physics. This has happened in every gameplay I've played. For some reason, this box just goes berserk. Well, we can let it fly off into the next room. We'll loot the Nuka-Cola here and go chase it down later. Heading into this room, we see that it opens up into another one to the west, but let's finish exploring this first. We see 1 Nuka-Cola on a shipping container. We can leap up on top of this machine to reach it at the very top. There are more crates piled on top of each other here. This must be the packaging and shipping department, where Nuka-Cola Quantum was shipped to the world the day the bombs dropped. We see more Nuka lurks whom are already dead. Heading down the ramp, we can loot the final Nuka-Cola Quantum in this possessed carton, and rounding a big truck, we can loot a cooler before heading to the doors at the very end. These are locked. We can access the nearby terminal to unlock these doors, which lead us back outside to Nuka World. And upon doing so, we discover the Nuka-Cola bottling plant. Now, we do have to clear the exterior, but before we do, let's finish exploring the interior. So turning around, we can head out of the shipping department and go west into what looks like the bottling department. Here, we find a turret. There are bottles of Nuka-Cola all over the place. Many of these cartons are filled with Nuka-Cola. This is a fantastic place to hit for Nuka-Cola, which incidentally is an ingredient in a couple of important recipes, including the recipe for Overdrive, which is why I'm looting it. If we loot every bottle here, we can walk away with 44 Nuka-Cola, 10 Nuka-Cola Quantum, 4 Nuka-Cola Cherry, and 45 empty bottles of Nuka-Cola. Once we've finished looting all of the Nuka-Cola we can possibly carry, we can head up the nearby scaffolding steps and take them up to a floating pod to the east. Immediately turning to the right, we see a staircase leading up to that floating pod that had the system's control terminal. So this is where we would have ended up if instead of going south out of that room, we would have gone north. Now that we've connected those dots, we see that this pod continues on to the north, but before we head that way, we need to finish exploring the bottling plant floor. We see that the bottling plant floor opens up to another room to the west. Here we find even more destroyed Nuka-Lurks and wrecked Protectrons. We see a hole in the wall to the west. This leads to a pipe filled with murky water. We can follow it north, and it twists and turns until we exit beneath a bridge just outside the world of refreshment. We hear a bunch of Nuka-Lurks walking around on top of us, so instead of going out to face them, we can turn around and head back into the world of refreshment. After all, there's still a bit more we need to explore. We see one stairway leading up to some scaffolding to the west, and this brings us to that door that we saw earlier. This is that part of the bottling plant that we saw earlier, and with that, we've reconnected every single path, which leaves only one left to explore. To do so, we retrace our steps, go up the stairs, back into the floating pod, and this time, head north. There's a cooler on the ground next to a desk to the east, another cooler on top of a tool chest to the north. The pod continues to the north. We see some doors to the left, but we'll check those out in a minute. And we find a third cooler on the ground underneath a console to the west. This brings us to a staircase leading down to even more scaffolding that runs the perimeter of the shipping room, eventually leading back down to the shipping floor. But we've been here, so heading all the way back, the only place left to go is out these doors to Nuka World. It's dawn. It's still dark enough to sneak around, but the sun will be rising soon. We find ourselves in a floating pod with a machine gun turret to the west and a Nuka-Lurk king to the north. Even though he is a skull, he thankfully doesn't have a Mirelurk shell, so using Blitz and our Pikmin blade, we can take him out with some sneak criticals. This staircase goes up to the roof, but before we explore it, let's head back down into that pod. We find some bottle caps on a desk here, another bottle of Nuka-Cola on the shelf, and then we can turn right to get rid of that machine gun turret. Turning left, we follow the pod south until we find another gunner corpse. Heading out of the pod to the right, we find a staircase leading down to a ground floor swarming with Nuka-Lurks. I don't want to go mano-a-mano with these just yet. Let's find a better place from which to attack. Heading up the stairs to the west, we see another pod, and inside the pod, another Nuka-Lurk king. In this pod, we find a terminal to the north, but it's not that interesting. All it allows us to do is access the spotlight controls. We can turn those off for now, but it's not going to do us much help as it will become daylight soon. Going through the door to the pod to the west, this pod opens up to some more scaffolding. We see two paths before us, a path that goes up and a path that turns left, rounding one of these big tanks. I decided to take my chances with daylight looming and turn north around the tank. But just as I did, a Nuka-Lurk king leaps out of an exposed pool. I managed to catch it in vats as it was flying through the air, and I knocked it back using Blitz. But now I've gone and attracted the attention of all of the Nuka-Lurks. One of them raced up to these pods and found me. I can't take him one-on-one, so there was only one option: to climb the roof as far as I could go. Fleeing from this Nuka lurk, I began to scatter fragmentation mines behind me as I ran, and it seems to have worked. We hear the explosions behind us. Oh, and a Nuka lurk queen emerges from the water, and I quickly learn that I'm not safe up here. One blast of either that Nuka lurk queen poison or a sonic blast from a Nuka lurk king. I'm not sure which one of those got me, but it almost killed me. I was saved by nerd rage. Thankfully, I was standing right next to an elevator. Taking the elevator up, we can use some stim packs to heal on up, and then follow the scaffolding at the top all the way around where we see the flagpole, where we are supposed to raise the Nuka World Raider flag of our choice. This platform also overlooks the big pool where the Nuka lurk queen was. And from here, we can use our Overseer's Guardian to get some sneak criticals. I realize that this is not exactly exciting to watch. This would be a much more interesting video if I was down there on the ground in power armor using fist weapons to pulverize this Nuka lurk queen with my fists. But this is my squishy stealth character, my paper assassin, and I didn't want to die. So playing the patience game and relying on these sneak criticals, I was finally able to kill the queen. But we still have to kill all of the Nuka lurks outside. There was one floating around in that pool that I could snipe off, but the rest were scattered, some of them still on the roof after having chased after me. By now, it was morning. Taking the elevator down to the ground, we immediately find a Nuka lurk king. Now we can loot and pay more attention to this area that we previously ran quickly through. After turning off a radio, we can find a fusion core on a cabinet to the north. Heading out of this pod and going down a ramp, we find ourselves at some sort of helicopter landing pad, possibly used by Brad Burton himself when he came to the factory to check up on things. There's some scaffolding to the west, but we'll turn north for now. We find a cooler on top of some crates. Heading north, we find a ramp leading down, which goes around one of those big Nuka bottle sculptures to the rooftop of a lower building. Here, we can walk over an oil slick round the corner to the south to find another little pod. Inside this pod, we find a skeleton holding a bottle of Nuka-Cola Quantum next to a lunch pail. There's also an interesting glitch here, which I again have seen in every playthrough. The bottles of Nuka-Cola, which are supposed to be in this Nuka-Cola vending machine, are instead floating just outside of it. After looting the cola, we can loot a first aid kit on a wall to the north, and with that we finish exploring this pod. We see some scaffolding stairs to the west. This leads us down to that very first pod where we came outside, where we killed the Nuka lurk king and the machine gun turret. So now that we've done a big loop, we can retrace our steps to go back up to the highest point of the rooftop and then take the ramp down to the west. If we explore south, we find a ramp that goes back up to that helicopter pad. That was the ramp we saw from the other side earlier, but this is a dead end. So to continue, we need to explore the rooftop to the west. There's not a whole lot here. A lot of empty containers and junk. However, from here, we can take some more pot shots at some Nuka lurks in the water. And with that, we successfully clear the exterior. but we still have to clear the interior. Before we do, we need to finish exploring the exterior. Going down the ramp, we can explore the western edge of this roof where we find a sentimental scene. We find 2 skeletons dumped out of their chairs. Next to them is a lantern, some flowers, a camera, and some bottles of wine. This couple was clearly on a date, and we see that they were married. We still find a wedding ring on each of their hands, even after 200 years. They may have been a married couple working here at the Nuka-Cola bottling plant. They came up here for a beautiful view of the park, only to have the bombs drop at that very moment. But this is the western edge of the roof, which means we're at a dead end, so we need to turn around and head east. Heading east, we find a pod on the roof filled with all sorts of useful workbenches. There are 2 weapon workbenches in here, and on a countertop to the east, we find a first aid kit and a note. They hit Boston. They hit Boston! This is really happening. Janie's college is out there. The hell with the evacuation protocols. I have got to go find her. Raoul, if you find this, sorry I couldn't stick to the buddy system. Good luck, Casey. So Casey came up to the roof to see whether or not it was a drill, and she discovered that it wasn't. Instead of sticking with her fellow employees, she left to go in search of her daughter. On the countertop next to this note is Casey's password. And this is the password we can use to access the terminal that unlocks the Nuka-Cola painted suit of T-51 power armor. With that, we've explored the entire roof. So hopping down to the rooftops of one of these pods, we can leap down to the scaffolding near to that tank where the Nuclear King leapt out and attacked us. There's nothing in the water, however. Climbing the scaffolding down to the ground floor, we can open up a Pulowski preservation shelter to the north. Inside, we find some Rad-X and a bottle of Nuka-Cola. There are plenty of Mirelurk egg clutches in the mud underneath the scaffolding. A great place to get more of those Mirelurk eggs. Heading into the water, we can loot the Nuka-Lurk Queen. On her body, we find 5 pieces of Queen Nuka-Lurk meat. These are the only pieces of Queen Nuka-Lurk meat we can get in the entire game. As far as I know, this is the only Queen Nuka-Lurk we find. They are the only ingredient necessary for creating grilled Queen Nuka-Lurk, which restores 220 hit points and grants us +3 endurance for 1 in-game hour. A pretty useful aid item. After we kill all the Nuka-Lurks and finish looting all the eggs we want, we find a trailer to the west. Inside we find a bottle of Nuka-Cola in the fridge and a corpse on the ground near to an ammo box and a pipe pistol. With that, we completely explore the exterior, but we still have 2 tasks. We need to get that suit of T-51 power armor and somehow clear those Nuka-Lurks. It was easier for me outside as I was to kill these guys from range, but inside the plant and especially in that river, everything is so cramped and close together. I may need to get creative to find a way to kill all these guys. My strategy hinges on gaining access to that suit of T-51 power armor. One of my great weaknesses right now is I'm just a squishy paper assassin. My melee is pretty strong, I just die too quickly. At first I started by trying to take advantage of those 2 machine gun turrets on the platform pointing at the door. I used a series of grenades and mines to lure these guys up here, but no matter how many grenades I used, no matter how many Nuka-Lurks I lured up here, the machine gun turrets just did not want to attack. So this was a wasted effort. I need to find another strategy. Now the Nuka-Lurk hunters don't have a shell, which means they're fairly squishy. If I can get a sneak critical off on these guys, I can tear them down pretty quickly. So waiting for the right moment. One down, however the other one charged me. I managed to kill him the old-fashioned way, by picking at him with my deliverer and hiding behind a wall. That leaves just a couple of Nuka-Lurks, and I learned something about my assassin. These Nuka-Lurks are much easier if I engage them in melee through VATS when facing their face. In this way I was actually able to melee one of them down. Now the path south-southeast is clear. Heading that way we see, sure enough, the security door to the cage is open, and we can climb on into our brand new suit of Nuka-Cola painted T-51 power armor. Ah, it's a beautiful thing. Our last task is to kill the remaining Nuka-Lurk in this tunnel. Heading out of the cage, we can turn west, loot a Nuka-Cola Dark that I missed earlier, and then do our best to sneak up on a Nuka-Lurk. The compass tells us that there are 3 more to go. Rounding the corner to Western Town, we see one, but he's a bit far away. However, we can take the opportunity to loot that Nuka-Cola Quantum we shot off of the roof earlier. Here it is, lying on the water, and we learn that it's inexplicably an ice-cold Nuka-Cola Quantum. How this Nuka-Cola Quantum has stayed ice-cold for 200 years is a bit beyond me, but hey, I'll take it. After looting more eggs, we see that the Nuka-Lurk is coming our way. We can head south and hide before a building, waiting for just the right moment. Oh, and see, I didn't get him in the face. I attacked from the side, and my sneak critical did far less damage. It was at this moment that I was very grateful that I was inside a suit of power armor. Heading back to that corner by the building to recuperate, we notice something on the wall. Putting on our cappy glasses that we got from Sierra Petrovita, sure enough, we discover a hidden cappy.
Okay, that's another clue found.
Only a few more left to go. The same is true for the Nuka-Lurks. Continuing along the river, we see one Nuka-Lurk rounding the corner and waiting for just the right moment, making sure we see his face. That's how it's done. However, we did catch the attention of this final Nuka-Lurk, so running around the corner, we can wait for him to creep forward until... Bingo. And with that, we complete a world of refreshment. We can now raise the flag of the raider gang we like best on the flagpole on the roof of this building, or not, depending on the choices we want to make with this quest. And with our pockets filled with Nuka-Lurk meat and dozens of bottles of Nuka-Cola, we can hightail it back to our player home and get to crafting. What are your thoughts on the world of refreshment? I encourage you to check out my video on the Bradburton Overpass and the Gunners. It's pretty interesting to learn why the Gunners went all the way out here, and to check out my video on Project Cobalt, another one of those heartbreaking pre-war stories that made you just realize how miserable that world was. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I publish a new Fallout video 6 days a week on a wide range of topics spanning all of the games, so if you want to make sure you don't miss my next video, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. I take Sundays off, which means I'm not going to have a video for you tomorrow, but never fear, I'll be back to work on Monday, which means I'll have a video ready for you Tuesday morning. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook to keep up to date with all Oxhorn news. And if you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you Tuesday morning, bright and early, with a brand new video.